Questions demand answers. What time is it? Oh, it's 3:31 p.m. What's your name? My name is Karen. Or, how many eyes does a spider have? Most have around 8. Questions demand answers, like greedy little children that scream bloody murder until they get their own way. Thankfully, though, it's often not too hard to appease these monsters. You search it up on Google, or you discover the answer yourself by looking at your wristwatch. But have you ever had a question asked to you that you didn't know the answer to? Even worse, have you ever known the answer, but just didn't have the right words for it? To make things even worse, maybe you realized that the words you were looking for didn't even exist in the English lexicon. For some people, that dreadful question is, why am I so different from other people? It's a question of belonging, a question that countless queer youth have asked themselves, especially over the past few years. Because COVID-19 was a hard time for all of us. Distancing ourselves from our loved ones was miserable, while watching our friends grow sick without being able to meet them in person was similarly torturous. But the pandemic brought on some unique problems for queer youth. Because even before COVID-19, queer youth carried a disproportionate burden of mental health issues, their identities acting as risk factors for trauma, victimization, and abuse. So, lockdown posed a daunting set of challenges for them, being forced to stay at home with unsupportive or abusive family members, being unable to express themselves safely, being cut off from support systems, whether that be their friends or extended relatives. In fact, during the pandemic, more than half of gender and sexual minority youth in the United States of America reported increased symptoms of anxiety or depressive symptoms, while only 1 out of 3 reported that they lived in a safe home. So, for some people, the question, why am I so different from other people, is an unanswerable question, especially in a world in which support systems were cut off or hard to find without a clear answer to the question. With such high stakes, the unanswered question tick-tocks its way towards an impending explosion. But let's say you, fortunately, find the answer. Maybe you don't feel the attraction that's commonly called romance to other people. Maybe you're attracted to a certain gender. Maybe your body feels like someone else's, and every time you look in the mirror is a new form of torture. Now what? You've got the answer, but you don't know how to answer. You haven't got the right words for it. To solve this problem, younger generations have started coining new terms, such as demigirl and aro-ace. Demigirl refers to a non-conforming gender identity in which the person identifies as partially female, while aro-ace is an identity in which the person lacks romantic and sexual attraction to other people. Without these words, you wouldn't have the word that describes the state of feeling partially feminine, but not quite, not enough to call yourself a girl. Without these words, you wouldn't be able to describe your daily life lacking romance and sexual attraction while people around you constantly poke and prod about your love life. But here's the question. Why are these terms popping up now, unlike most other words we use in daily life? More importantly, why should we respect this phenomenon? Well, this phenomenon should be respected by everyone, including those outside of the community, because of historical context and the crucial role it plays in finding a sense of belonging for queer youth. According to historian and philosopher Michel Foucault, before the 19th century, no terms in the Western world described sexual identities, but rather the sexual acts. Famously, in the 19th century, Lord Alfred Douglas wrote to Oscar Wilde in a letter, "The love that dare not speak its name." The love was present even then, but silenced. Then came the word homosexual. The state of being homosexual, homosexuality, alongside being asexual, was considered a legitimate mental disorder until 1973. Then came the word gay, finally used and adopted by queer people. But the word queer used to be a slur-like term to refer to LGBTQ plus people until the community reclaimed it as an umbrella term. So, after such criminalization and censorship, it does not surprise me that only a few adopted queer terms existed by the time the internet was popularized. Now, instead of reclaiming like previous generations, queer youth had started creating. The internet brought about an explosion of new terms: gray romantic, agender, demisexual, and many more. It was only natural that after so many years of oppression, that when queer people were finally given some form of liberty to express themselves, they started naming themselves with words that weren't associated with crimes or disorders. This phenomenon isn't something that the idle generations are busying themselves with, but rather, it's something that was bound to happen, a natural course of action. It's the start of the liberation of a persecuted group of human beings, and it matters to everyone. Especially in this critical time at which the effects of COVID-19 still linger, we must all acknowledge that promoting a sense of belonging for queer youth is essential to healing the wounded generation. Specific queer labels, especially those created by the members of the community, give individuals a sense of clarity while acting as a group name for queer youth to unite and support each other under. So, here's the question. How can we, even those outside of the queer community, support queer youth and their labels? First, let's look at an odd phenomenon that's happening alongside the births of numerous queer labels. Although creators of many queer terms, Generation Z is also the likeliest to opt for the umbrella term queer. Why? Well, queer labels are charged with all kinds of implications, and connotations are dangerous in general when attached to core aspects of human identity. A good parallel would be the stereotype that Asians are good at math. Sure, it sounds great at first glance, but the unfair pressure on the community and the dismissal of hard work is crippling to younger Asians. Such seemingly positive framing has diverted necessary attention away from urgent issues such as structural inequality, as the popular stereotype of success casts a shadow over Asians of a lower socioeconomic status. The positive attribute associated with the word Asian has created a definition that some people who identify with the word itself cannot relate to. And queer labels are charged with all kinds of implications. Especially after COVID-19, mainstream media coverage of the community seemed to be charged racially, politically, economically, or in some other shape or form that is totally unrelated to the identities themselves. Describing oneself as pansexual or non-binary would suggest things about them that have nothing to do with what the words actually mean. Some may assume their political orientation, while some may talk about how uneducated they must be. And some would go as far as to assume unsavory things about their upbringing. For example, calling a man gay often implies feminine qualities, connotating weakness. However, many gay people present themselves in masculine manners, going against the stereotype of femininity that comes with the word gay. Therefore, it is reasonable in this circumstance that some may feel reluctant to identify with the word gay, as it has taken on a different meaning unrelated to its actual definition. Queer labels have always been crucial to the community for affinity, belonging, and security. And no label that describes the identity of a real human being should be too heavy to carry. So, here are 3 ways in which we can all lighten this weight. Number 1, call yourself out. If you catch yourself associating specific images with unrelated queer identities, don't let it slide. Maybe correct yourself. What you think as an individual matters. In this modern connected society, many of us express ourselves in semi-permanent marks daily, whether that be in a casual conversation, at least for you, that your friend might remember for the rest of their lives, or in a comment under a silly TikTok. Yes, you're free to think whatever you like, but remember that your thoughts count. Number 2, treat LGBTQ+ identities like other, more normalized aspects of human identity. In our day and age, racism and sexism are no-go zones. If I cooked a very, very nice meal for someone and they responded by saying, well, it's good, but that's because you're a girl, most people would be outraged, and reasonably so. But when my friend was crying because of the death of a family member and someone joked, oh, he's so gay, why did everyone in the room laugh? We should treat stereotyping of LGBTQ plus identities like that of more normalized aspects of identities that are accepted as traits that we are born with, like race and sex. Number 3, and finally, whoa. That's it. When someone stereotypes or stigmatizes an LGBTQ plus identity, it can be hard to speak up. And sometimes, for safety reasons, it may be unwise to speak up. And I wouldn't ask that of anyone. Instead, I ask you to go, whoa. Pause. Don't go with the flow. Think about it. The seconds that you take to think about the words that have been spoken will, over time, change their impact. Using these 3 methods, we must accept and neutralize queer labels. All questions demand answers. All questions deserve answers. Let us work to let people answer their questions with the right words. Thank you.